Eeny, meeny, miny. You.
Mom?
Mommy's with the maggots now.
Don't want to take my babies.
Hey up guys, so today on the channel I'm going to be reviewing the new chapter in the Evil Dead franchise called Evil Dead Rise, which is written and directed by Lee Cronin. Even though Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell serve as executive producers on this film, it is Cronin who is captaining the Evil Dead franchise, and he's delivered something that honors Sam Raimi's Evil Dead films, but also something that stands on its own merits. This isn't a remake or a reboot, it's more of a sequel or a requel, if you will. It stands alongside the previous Evil Dead films. There's plenty of nods, winks, and Easter eggs to the previous Evil Dead films, but it is fresh and a little bit different to what we used to. The title, Evil Dead Rise, refers to not only the return of the parasitic demonic Deadites, which rise up once again, but it also refers to the primary setting of this film. Normally with the Evil Dead movies, they're set in rural, isolated, cabin in the woods type settings, whereas Cronin has mixed up a bit, and the majority of the film actually takes place in this old, slightly dilapidated high-rise LA apartment building. Beth, played by Lily Sullivan, visits her sister Ellie, played by Alyssa Sutherland, and her three kids, Bridget, Danny, and Cassie, who live in the high-rise. When Danny discovers the Book of the Dead in the building's basement car park, you guessed it, they read from it, despite all the warning signs, and they unknowingly conjure up the Deadites, which then infect Ellie, and then spends the rest of the night tormenting and terrorizing her children and her sister, who are trapped inside their apartment. And all manner of fucked up shit happens. So what did I think of Evil Dead Rise? I thought this movie was bloody terrific. Me and my friend Tony had the best time watching this in the cinema, surrounded by people. It was so much fun watching people freak out and screaming in the cinema. I haven't felt an atmosphere like that in a cinema for a long time. I'm not one of those film reviewers who's like obsessed with the horror genre, but this film was a masterclass in simple, straightforward, well-structured storytelling. Lee Cronin has done an amazing job writing and directing this film. He deserves so much praise. It is a very lean screenplay. Like, he trims the fat out of the screenplay. There is not a single line of dialogue that is wasted or doesn't serve a purpose. And with his direction, you can see the influences of other horror films like Hereditary, Alien, The Shining. Like I said, there are nods to the previous Evil Dead movies, but it's just given a slight twist. You know, like how you usually see the tree vines in the Evil Dead movies. There's something similar in that with like elevator cables when Ellie is getting infected by the Deadites. And even the opening shot of this film is a reference to the Evil Dead whooshing camera work when the spirit infects whoever its victim is, but it's given a playful little twist, which I liked. It's very dynamically shot as well. This is only Cronin's second ever feature film, and I really can't wait to see more of his work. I hope he gets to do more Evil Dead movies as well. So yeah, the script is concise and to the point. This film is a brisk 97-minute runtime. The characters are well established and explored, and the acting in this is top notch. It's so precise in the way that it sets things up. There's all these little details that are set up early in the film which come back around. The editing as well is sublime. His atmosphere is a delicious blend of confined, sickly horror as well as dark, goofy comedy. I will say it's not as darkly funny as the Raimi movies, but the film definitely does have its moments. There's one death, I won't say what happened specifically, but it involves an eyeball, and that's all I'm gonna say. I grabbed my friend Tony's knee in that moment and said, what the hell just happened? Although now that I think about it, it's probably one of the least gruesome deaths in this film. But having said that, that's not how I would want to go. I'm not an easily scared type of person, okay? It takes a lot for a horror movie to really, get to me, but this movie, I was genuinely on edge. I really admire Cronin's creativity with the horror elements in this film. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but let's just say you're not going to be able to look at a cheese grater or wine glasses the same way again. But damn, Lee Cronin, that came out of your head? That was gnarly as fuck. But I also need to give a shout out to Lee Cronin for favoring practical effects more than CGI. There is CGI in this film, but it's just used like for dusting or finessing. Like, the film doesn't rely on it. There is so much practical gore and bile and blood in this movie. Like, it really does feel like the original Evil Dead in terms of going for those old school practical effects, and I love that. Like, I really hope the producers of this film provide all the child actors with therapy, because not only do their characters need therapy after the night that they endure in the high-rise, but these kids are put through it in this movie. Like, some of the stuff that happens to them is just so scarring and horrific, like absolutely drenched in blood. Like, yeah, I hope the kids have a good support network to help them through this. I'm sure they had a blast making it, but yeah, you gotta be a little concerned that these child actors went through what they went through in this movie. You'll see what I mean when you watch it. But I actually think that is a reason why the film feels as nasty as it does, because it is centered around a family, this one. Usually with the Evil Dead movies, it's centered around horny young adults, but this is centered around a family, and there's like 3 kids in this family, and the fact that there's 3 kids really adds, more emotional stakes to the film. Nobody wants to see children possessed and mutilating themselves, but I do think that's why I was so invested in the film, because it's just way more vicious when the victims of the Deadites are young kids. I've said it before, but Lee Cronin, you have a twisted mind, my friend. Did you have a rough childhood or something? And like I said, I really enjoyed the acting in this film. I thought everybody in this was great, but I want to give special mention to Lily Sullivan and Alyssa Sutherland. It's harder than you think to say those 2 names back together. Lily Sullivan and Alyssa Sutherland. Woo-wee! My name is Alyssa Sutherland, and I'm back again. And I was a lovely 5th victim. Back rolls? She kind of does do back rolls in this movie, and by that I mean she's like contorting her spine and all sorts of creepy ways. Yeah, Alyssa Sutherland's physicality in this film is so freaky. The way she contorts her body as the Deadite is like, taking over her body and possessing her. God, she is so fantastic in this. Honestly, her performance is so chilling, I would nominate it for an Oscar. I know they're not going to, but yeah, it's the type of horror performance I would love to see acknowledged with an Oscar now. I know it's not going to happen. I'm living in a fairy tale. But yeah, that performance, it has stayed with me since I saw this film last week. And Lily Sullivan is also brilliant in the film. She's sort of the emotional anchor of the film. Like, the film really does have a lot of subtext about motherhood, and in this film, she really steps up and embraces her maternal instincts when she's like looking after Cassie and her siblings. It's also wonderful to see some trans representation in this cast. We've got trans actor Morgan Davies playing one of the siblings, Danny. Another terrific performance. As for negatives, I don't really have all that many, but I will say that I do think the opening and closing scenes of this film weren't all that necessary. They're kind of a nod to like the previous Evil Dead movies, like set in the woods and all that. But I think the middle section of this film just works by itself, set in the apartment. I don't think it needed the bookended bits of the movie, really. I think all the stuff in the middle was perfect. And I'm not sure the beginning and the ending were absolutely necessary, but I didn't dislike those scenes. I'm just not sure the film needed them. So let's ask those 3 questions. Firstly, would I watch it again? 100%. And I'm not even a hardcore horror fan or anything like that, but this movie kind of restored my faith in modern horror. It's very polished and modern, but it also feels very old school as well. It's going to be added to my collection for sure, but it might also show up in my top 10 movies of 2023 video. That's right. It's that good. It's definitely a contender for one of my top 10 favorite movies of the year. Question 2, do I recommend it for you guys? Obviously, the Evil Dead films are not for everyone, okay? These movies are made for the horror fans and, of course, the Evil Dead fans. So yeah, I absolutely recommend it to anybody that loves the Evil Dead movies, or if you have just a slight appreciation of horror movies, then yes, go watch it. You will have a blast, and do go watch it in a cinema surrounded by others. Like, being in a cinema, listening to people shrieking and freaking out just made it all the more joyful and palpable. So yeah, go watch it in a cinema if you can. And third question, what score to give out of 10? I had a few teeny tiny minor gripes to this film, but it really is one of the best examples of lean, enjoyable, visceral storytelling I've seen in a good while, okay? This is one of my favorite horrors I've seen so far this decade. So I'm gonna give Evil Dead Rise a score of 9.5 out of 10. Pretty much perfect. But as always, guys, just one bloke's opinion. I do want to hear from you. Have you seen Evil Dead Rise? If you have, Where does it rank for you in your rankings of the Evil Dead movies? Let me know in that comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, help me out with that little thumbs up button. For more movie, TV, and Oscars related content, don't forget to click subscribe. And for more things related to movies, TV, the Oscars, and popcorn culture, I'm Luke Hearfield, and I'll see you next time.